She served her country with honor, only to have guns pointed at her in her own driveway. Why? They didn't even give her a chance to open her mouth. Not a hello, not a can I help you? Just shouting, guns out. Commands barked like she wasn't even human. It all happened so fast, but also slow enough for her to remember every second of it. The sound of the tires crunching over her own driveway. The screech of walkie-talkies. The way the officers' hands gripped their weapons. Not out of caution, but out of something colder. Danielle Rucker wasn't a stranger to intensity. She'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, ran tactical units under fire, and trained with some of the best K-9 handlers in the country. But nothing ever prepared her for the kind of fear that comes not from being in a war zone, but from being a black woman in your own front yard. It was a late Sunday afternoon in Modesto, California. Sun just starting to drop behind the trees, long drive back from Sacramento. Danielle had been helping her cousin move into a new apartment. She was tired, dressed in leggings, combat boots, and a faded Fort Bragg hoodie. Her 2 partners, Rex and Nova, both Belgian Malinois, rested silently in their crates in the back of her SUV, trained, calm, alert, just like she'd taught them. She pulled into her driveway. The garage door remote clipped to her sun visor. Her modest 2-bedroom ranch sat on a quiet street lined with trimmed hedges and retirees who waved at passing cars. It wasn't fancy, but she'd bought it herself after leaving the army. It was hers. She tapped the button. The garage began to rise. That's when she noticed something. A woman standing on the sidewalk across the street, watching, holding her phone. Her lips were moving. Danielle squinted. She didn't recognize the woman. Slim build, early 50s, maybe blonde bob, athletic wear, holding a yoga mat in one arm like she'd just come from a class. Danielle didn't think much of it at first. New neighbor, maybe. She gave a polite nod and went back to backing her SUV into the driveway. Then less than 3 minutes later, she heard sirens, 4 of them. What happened next would feel like something out of a bad episode on cable. Police cruisers swung into her cul-de-sac like a tactical op. One cut off her driveway before she could even turn the car off. Another blocked the street behind her, doors flung open. "Step out of the vehicle," one of the officers screamed. Danielle blinked, confused. "Excuse me," she said, rolling her window halfway down. "Hands where we can see them now." She looked to her left, then her right. Was someone behind her? But no, guns were pointed at her at her car. One officer, tall white male, late 30s, shaved head, crept toward her with his gun drawn. Another crouched near a neighbor's bush, also armed. "Ma'am, we got a call about a break-in." You match the description. Danielle kept her hands on the steering wheel. Her heart was steady, but her voice carried steel. "This is my house. License and registration." "My house is right there," she said calmly. "I'm a veteran. My name's on the deed." They weren't listening. They never really do. Not at first. From the back of the SUV, Rex gave a low bark. Nova didn't move. Her training kept her still, unless commanded. Danielle leaned slightly to the left and with practiced precision tapped her knuckle twice against the center console. A silent command. The locks clicked open. And that's when everything changed. But the officers still hadn't seen what was about to walk out of that car. The back door of the SUV opened slowly. The officers tightened their grips. What they expected to see, maybe someone else hiding, maybe a threat, wasn't what came out. First, a black nose poked out. Then, a sleek, muscular Belgian Malinois stepped down onto the driveway with sharp precision. Rex, his coat glinted in the light, black and tan, his movement smooth, trained. His eyes swept across the scene like he was calculating everything. Nova followed, lighter in color but just as controlled. No barking, no growling, just quiet, steady presence. Each dog wore a tan tactical vest clearly marked. U.S. military canine do not pet. Rex moved to Danielle's side without being called. Nova flanked her opposite. They didn't look scared. They looked like they were waiting for a mission. For a moment, no one spoke. Just the sound of radio static and shallow breathing. Danielle finally stepped out, slow and deliberate. Her posture was relaxed, but her presence unshakable. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. "My name is Danielle Rucker," she said. "I live here. I just got back from Sacramento. These are my dogs, military working dogs. I served 12 years active duty, 6 in K-9 Special Ops." The officers didn't move. She reached into her pocket slowly, deliberately slow, and pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open to show her veteran ID and her California driver's license. One officer, shorter Latino guy, mid-40s badge, read Perez, stepped forward and took it. He looked at the ID, then at her, then at the dogs. "These are military dogs?" he asked, voice cracking slightly. "Yes," she replied. "Trained by me. They don't bite unless I tell them to." Rex took one small step closer, calm as ever. "You called this in?" Perez turned to the woman across the street. The blonde neighbor still stood there, arms crossed, phone clutched in one hand like a trophy. "Yes, I didn't know who she was." She looked suspicious. "Big black truck, dogs in the back. You thought I was breaking into my own house?" Danielle asked, looking straight at her. The woman shrugged. "I didn't recognize you." "You've lived here how long?" Danielle asked. The woman hesitated. A few months? I've lived here 5 years. I mowed that lawn every Saturday morning for 5 years. You never thought to wave. The woman blinked. I just thought Danielle looked back at Perez. Am I under arrest? He looked uncomfortable, shifted his weight, glanced at the other officers who were now lowering their weapons, sheepish. No, ma'am. There's obviously been a mistake. Danielle didn't say anything right away, just looked at her dogs. Rex sat down beside her. Nova laid down, her head on her paws. She knelt between them, gave each a gentle pat. The other officers started to back away slowly, one of them muttering something into his radio. Perez handed back her ID. You understand, ma'am? We had to respond. You had to respond, she said. But you didn't have to roll up with your guns out like I was robbing a bank. He didn't respond to that. You could have asked questions. You could have looked at the mailbox. Rucker, right there. Or maybe just, I don't know, said hello like a human being. Danielle's voice didn't rise, but it cut like a blade. Calm, clear, undeniable. Perez looked embarrassed now. The other officers had already started retreating to their cruisers. Danielle stayed still, dogs beside her watching. Across the street, the neighbor had started to quietly walk away. No apology, just retreat. Danielle exhaled, not relief, just release, like a pressure valve letting go. But what she didn't know yet was that one of the neighbors had filmed the whole thing. The video wasn't shaky or distorted. It was crystal clear. Shot from a porch across the street by an older man named Franklin Yates, who always said little, but saw everything. Franklin didn't come out much. His knees were shot from decades in construction, and his wife had passed the year before. But he sat on that porch every afternoon, a bottle of root beer in hand. The other hand, never far from his phone. He didn't expect to catch anything dramatic that day, but as soon as the police started yelling, he hit record. He'd seen Danielle come and go for years. She shoveled his driveway during that freak freeze 2 winters ago. Never asked for a dime. So, when they boxed her in like she was a suspect in a manhunt, he hit the red button. In the video, you can hear the police shouting. You can see Danielle's calm movements. You can hear the slight click as her dog stepped out. And you can feel the shift in the air when the officers saw those vests. The video wasn't edited. No music, no slow motion, just raw footage, 74 seconds long. And someone, maybe Franklin's grandkid, maybe a neighbor, uploaded it that night. It took less than 24 hours to hit 500,000 views. Danielle didn't even know about the video yet. She was inside, sitting on her couch with Rex curled up at her feet, and Nova beside the door, always alert. She still hadn't eaten. Her keys were still in her coat pocket. She hadn't even taken her boots off. Her phone buzzed. Text from her cousin. Girl, is that you in this video? Danielle frowned, clicked the link. She watched it once, then again, then a third time, but slower this time. It was strange seeing yourself from the outside like that. Her posture, the way Rex stayed glued to her leg. The moment Nova gently stepped forward, placing herself between Danielle and the officer, she didn't cry, she didn't get angry, she just sat there staring. It wasn't until the 5th watch that she noticed the look on the blonde neighbor's face in the corner of the video. Not fear, not even concern, just blank, like she wasn't watching a person, just an object. She leaned back on the couch, closed her eyes. It's not that this was the first time she'd been profiled. It wasn't, but this one cut deeper because it happened in the place where she was supposed to be safe. Her home, her driveway, surrounded by the very flags she served under. She thought about calling her cousin back, thought about explaining everything. But what was there to explain? Rex let out a soft sigh and nudged her leg. She looked down at him, then reached for her boots. She needed air. But outside, just half a block away, the story was already spreading. Franklin was getting calls from people he hadn't heard from in years. Some saying he was brave, some asking if he'd set it up. A few others, anonymous numbers, telling him to mind his own business. And the neighbor, the blonde one, her name turned out to be Kimberlyn Fallner. She worked part-time at a wellness spa and posted inspirational quotes every morning. Her phone started blowing up too. Comments under the video weren't kind. Typical. She thought she was a hero. This is why people don't trust the cops. She really called the police because a black woman had a truck and 2 dogs. Others were worse. Harsher, no filters. Someone even found her Facebook page and started posting screenshots. By Tuesday morning, there were news vans parked 2 streets away. Danielle opened her door and spotted them. Lord, she whispered. Perez, the officer from the incident, had already submitted a report, and now his department was scrambling. They didn't expect the dogs. They didn't expect the video, and they definitely didn't expect the backlash. Internal Affairs opened a review. The police chief released a statement about procedural missteps and commitment to community safety. But no one came to Danielle directly. Not yet. But the silence from the department spoke louder than any public apology ever could. By Wednesday, Danielle's driveway had turned into a sort of checkpoint. Reporters in khakis and polos kept lingering near the curb. Every time she opened her front door, at least one mic got shoved her way. Danielle, do you believe this was racially motivated? Were your dogs trained to protect you in situations like this? Do you plan to file a complaint against the officers involved? She didn't answer. Not yet. She just walked Rex and Nova, kept to herself, and tried to act like things were normal, even though nothing was. That afternoon, the Modesto Tribune ran a headline that hit harder than she expected. Veteran homeowner confronted by police in her own driveway. Military canines may have prevented tragedy. It was true, and it was terrifying. She kept playing it over in her mind. The way the officers stood there, guns drawn, sweating, fingers hovering way too close to the trigger. How Rex and Nova had stood their ground like soldiers, unshaken, unmoved, calm. Most people didn't understand what those dogs could do. She'd trained them to disarm armed suspects, detect explosives, track fugitives across 8 meters of desert terrain. They could leap over 6-feet walls and sink their jaws into flesh with 400 pounds of pressure, but only if she said one word. One. But they didn't need it that day because their presence alone said more than she ever could. After the video went viral, messages flooded her inbox, hundreds of them. From veterans, from dog handlers, from parents, from strangers she'd never met, but who saw themselves in her face, in her posture, in that stillness she carried when they shouted at her like she was a threat. And then one message stood out. It was from a former Marine named Tanya Levins, now a K-9's trainer in San Diego. She wrote, "Your control in that moment was incredible. Most people would have panicked. Those dogs didn't just protect you physically. They told the world exactly who you are. You didn't raise your voice, but they heard you anyway." Danielle read it 3 times. The truth was she had been scared. Not shaking, not crying, but scared in that deep buried way. The kind of fear you carry in silence because showing it means letting someone else win. Later that evening, someone finally did knock on her door. It wasn't the police. It was Kimberlyn Fallner. She wore a blue button-up shirt, slacks, and nervousness like perfume. "I wanted to apologize," she said before Danielle even said a word. "I didn't know who you were. I didn't mean for it to go that far." Danielle didn't invite her in. She stood in the doorway with Rex at her heel and Nova watching from inside, silent, present. "You didn't know who I was?" Danielle asked. "But you still called 911 and said I was breaking into a house." Kimberlyn hesitated. "Looks suspicious." "What looks suspicious?" Danielle tilted her head. "The truck, the dogs, or me?" Kimberlyn fumbled. I just didn't recognize the car. I've had that car since I moved in. I don't look at cars." "Exactly." Long paused. "I'm sorry," Kimberlyn said again, quieter. Danielle nodded once. Not acceptance, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. "I hope you tell your friends that," she said. "I will. And I hope next time you pause before you reach for your phone like it's a weapon." Kimberlyn didn't answer, just nodded and walked away. Danielle closed the door behind her, and for the first time in days she sat down at her dining table and let herself breathe. Not because it was over, but because she was ready. But across town things were just getting started. Because now the mayor wanted a meeting. The next morning she met with the mayor. Not because she asked to, because he had to. Mayor Douglas Rern, mid-50s, clean-shaven, always talking like he was one sentence away from a campaign ad, requested the meeting to listen and learn. He brought a PR assistant with a legal pad and a small recorder just in case. Danielle didn't bother dressing up. She wore what she always wore, cargo pants, boots, the same faded hoodie. Rex and Nova stayed close, seated behind her as the mayor spoke. "We deeply regret what happened to you, Miss Rucker," he began, hands folded on the table between them. "It's unfortunate. What you experienced doesn't reflect the values of Modesto." She watched him closely, didn't nod, didn't smile. "You say it doesn't reflect the values," she said, calm as ever. "But it happened right in front of my own garage. And if my dogs hadn't been there, I'm not sure I'd be here either." The assistant shifted awkwardly. The mayor cleared his throat. "We're reviewing protocols. There'll be retraining. Officer Perez will be part of the internal review. And the neighbor, the one who called, she's issued a written apology." Danielle cut him off. "She didn't apologize to me. She apologized to the internet." Another pause. The mayor looked uncomfortable now. "I served this country for over a decade," she continued. "Not so people could point a gun at me while I'm unlocking my own garage." He tried to interject. She didn't let him. "You want to talk about training? Train your people to stop jumping at shadows every time they see someone who looks like me driving something bigger than a Honda Civic." Silence. Danielle leaned back in her chair. Rex's ears twitched, alert, but relaxed. Nova let out a soft yawn. "I don't need a medal," she added. "I don't need a banner on Main Street. I need to know I can pull into my driveway without worrying someone's going to assume I'm a threat before they even know my name." Mayor Rayburn nodded slowly. "You have every right to feel that way." "I know," she said. "I'm not asking for permission." He looked at his assistant. The recorder clicked off. The meeting ended without handshakes. Back home, Danielle found an envelope slid under her door. No return address, just a note inside. "Thank you for standing your ground. My daughter saw your video. She asked me if she would be safe if she grew up to look like you." I didn't have an answer, but now I do. It wasn't signed, but that note meant more to her than any press conference ever could. The neighborhood changed in small ways that week. A few people crossed the street just to say hello. A couple left flowers near her porch. A little boy on a scooter stopped and asked if he could say hi to the army dogs. She let him. Rex gave him a sniff. Nova just stared, unbothered, queen-like as always. But not everything shifted for the better. 2 officers from the incident were quietly moved to desk duty. The department didn't admit guilt, but they also didn't fight it. As for Kimberlyn Fowler, she deleted her social media accounts and started parking 2 blocks away instead of using her driveway. No one really saw her out jogging anymore. Danielle didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. This wasn't a win. It was just what happened. And sometimes that's the part that hurts most. Because for a moment, it felt like she was back in uniform again, having to prove herself to people who never even learned how to say her name right. But it wasn't over. Not until she told her story in her own words. The first email came from a local podcast host, then a journalist from the Sacramento Sentinel, then a producer from Good Morning Fresno, then a national outlet.